Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Welcome back to Marvel Us Disney, the show where we talk Marvel, Disney, theme parks, fandom, movies, comics, streaming, old VHS tapes probably hidden in your garage somewhere. And honestly, especially today, we're talking a lot about fandom itself. And I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and I'm joined, as always, by Dan Graney. And we are recording this episode on Sunday, May 10th, which is also Mother's Day here in the States. And Dan is recovering from a pretty indifferent brunch. Is that, how you explained it earlier? Or?
I was proud of myself. I actually managed to get a little bit ahead on the planning. I have a long history of Mother's Day misfortune. Not all on my shoulders, but I did take my mother and Paula out to brunch at a local restaurant, and once again, I have managed to maintain at least a bit of respectability here. But for me, brunch is just weird to me.
And this is why? Because it's a meal that arrives at a strange time of day, or
the timing is odd. It's late for breakfast. It's early for lunch. I just feel like you got to choose a lane here. But it's the mishmash of options. I just find them discordant. But my big mouth chooses to try everything. So, yes, I will have some scrambled eggs and pasta salad, or I'll eat some pancakes and I'll have a piece of prime rib. Palate be damned.
Well, coincidentally, the past couple of weeks have offered a bit of a brunch when it comes to Marvel-related news and rumors, and all becoming less about one giant breaking story and more, about kind of the atmosphere surrounding all of this stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. It's like a weird moment right now because objectively, I feel like we're almost drowning in Marvel and Star Wars content.
But yet, in spite of all of that, people are still angry because there is no Doomsday trailer.
Oh, yes, they are. We've got Daredevil finales, Star Wars finales, we got games and comics and animation, rumors, conventions, Disney Plus series. We've got movies stacked for years, and the fan base is just still standing outside the Marvel Studios tapping its watch.
Well, to be fair, Marvel has trained audiences to expect the next breadcrumb every 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's true. But, it got me thinking this week about how different fandom feels now versus, 20, 30 years ago.
Or 40.
Okay, well, we'll definitely get back there later.
Yes, but first, let's talk about our sponsor, which is unlockmagic.com, where you can get real discounts on Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando tickets, sometimes upwards of 12% off. And just so you know, Unlock Magic is run by the exact same team behind the DVC rental store and the DVC resale market. So just pick your dates, grab your tickets, and go. Unlock Magic makes it easy to rack up some pretty significant savings. Oh, and when you get those tickets, tell the nice folks at unlockmagic.com that it was Dan and it was Jim who sent you, okay? So, all right, we were referring to fandom a moment ago, so let's start with the biggest non-story story right now, which is what?
As you said, still no Avengers Doomsday trailer.
Which is kind of incredible in and of itself, given how much we already know, right?
Oh, yeah, I was going down this list. So we've got, we know that Marvel's returning to Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con. The Russos are openly talking about the movie. Now, openly talking as in talking about the fact that there's a movie. We've heard CinemaCon descriptions. We know, obviously, Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom. We know that the X-Men are involved, the Fox X-Men. We know that they're re-releasing Endgame, and that is crucial to this. But the fandom has just collectively entered this bizarre holding pattern.
And yet, the funny thing is, there is still a lot to watch right now.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, we really do have this embarrassment of riches. Like we said, Daredevil, it just wrapped a huge season. Star Wars just wrapped Maul, Shadow Lord. We get comics every Wednesday, just like the old days. Spider-Man games, X-Men 97. We've got season 2 of that. And it just somehow this fandom culture has become this waiting for the next thing before we've even really processed, or watched, or even digested the current thing.
So why do you think that is? Is that social media conditioning more as much as anything else?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Russos, they actually addressed this recently because they were talking about spoiler culture. Because right now, movies just aren't just movies anymore. They're puzzle boxes. People aren't asking, what's the story? They're asking, who's cameoing? What leaked? What universe are they from?
And, the weird part is if something isn't revealed 6 months early, people then assume, there's a problem.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, I think we've become weirdly bad at anticipation. It's not excitement. I just mean anticipation. There's a difference.
Okay. And, let's talk example. And for me, one of the funniest examples, at least this past week, was the renewed debate over Peter Parker's MCU origin. And one of the Russos, did you hear this? They made a comment that reignited this whole argument over whether Tony Stark essentially created the MCU version of Peter Parker. And what's interesting about this whole Peter Parker debate is that, it really comes down to whether fans think the MCU accidentally replaced Uncle Ben with Tony Stark. And the reason this exploded online, because, Joe Russo flat out said, in our minds, no, he wasn't responsible for Uncle Ben's death, which for Spider-Man fans, it's basically setting off a fireworks factory.
Yes. Well, for decades, Spider-Man's entire moral foundation is built on guilt. And the idea that Peter could have stopped something terrible and didn't. So when Russo says that wasn't the case in the MCU version, people immediately start debating whether Tony Stark became the defining influence instead.
Yeah, and Russo's comments frame Tony as his defining influence on Peter's growth, and the answer instantly goes, no, absolutely not. That's Uncle Ben's job.
Yeah. And it was funny because I just sat there thinking, like, have we really reached the point where Uncle Ben discourse has become like a geopolitical event?
Well, all right, but let's be honest here. The Spider-Man fandom can turn literally anything into a constitutional crisis. And honestly, the reason this keeps exploding online is that every Spider-Man conversation now turns into a referendum on what people think Spider-Man is supposed to represent.
I get it. And I know people care deeply about these characters, but I do think that we're seeing this tendency to litigate every single creative decision in real time, because the traditional Spider-Man story is built on guilt. Peter believes he could have stopped something terrible, and he didn't. And the MCU skipped most of that origin story. And a lot of that was just because, we all know it so well. It's just like we can skip the Batman origin story. Everybody knows it. So, and it burns up a lot of film time. But Tony Stark became the dominant adult figure instead, which is why some fans think Marvel accidentally created Iron Man Jr., while others argue Peter already had those values before Tony ever showed up. And I will say that does show a little bit of a disregard for Aunt May, because there's a lot more to that character than there really was ever there before. But I'm old enough to remember when Marvel fans were just excited if a character existed on screen at all.
Oh, okay. So now we're getting dangerously close to the nostalgia segment.
Well, no, we'll save that, because once I start going down that path, we're going to be here for 20 minutes.
All right. Well, we have a lot more to cover on this week's show before that, including a new hardcover book coming this June from Abrams, The Art of Marvel Animation's Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Have you seen this?
I did not know about this, and I haven't watched the show yet because I have it queued up, but I am almost finished with X-Men 97, and then I'm moving on to that.
Oh, you have to give this show a look at some point, Dan. Because what's great about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man is it actually... Again, this animated series, which debuted on Disney Plus back in January of 2025, it blends the classic comic book aesthetic with a modern day setting. And the book itself looks fantastic with photos and interviews with key creatives, sketches, storyboards, character and costume design, even animation cells. And it pretty much goes into everything that went into the making of this Disney Plus animated series, which, by the way, season 2 is supposed to debut at some point in 2026. Again, Disney Plus PR department, get it together. All right, and now, when we get back from this break, we're going to talk about another of New York's neighborhood heroes, the one from Hell's Kitchen. But before that, there's this.
All new drinks are now at McDonald's, with refreshers like the Strawberry Watermelon Refresher and the Mango Pineapple Refresher with popping boba, to crafted sodas like the Sprite Berry Blast with berry flavors and cold foam. Who knew ice-cold drinks could be so fire? Try them all now at McDonald's.
Refreshers contain caffeine. Copyright 2026, The Coca-Cola Company. Sprite is a registered trademark of The Coca-Cola Company.
This summer, serve up the cookout classics, Kraft mayo and dressing. Toss green salads with delicious ranch dressing or zesty Italian. Serve smooth, craveably creamy potato salads with mayo. We all know it's not a cookout without Kraft.
And we're back. So, all right, you had to have watched it this past week. The season 2 finale for Daredevil: Born Again. And again, spoiler alert, folks. We are going to get into some story specifics about what happened, because that finale. Oh my God.
Yeah. There was a lot going on there. What I love most is that Marvel, they seemed comfortable letting the street level side of the universe actually breathe, and it was there. I mean, it wasn't a portal opens and the sky beam appears. This was street, as in the gritty street. There was corruption, morality, fear. Neighborhood stakes, institutions falling apart, and Wilson Fisk deciding that to open the doors of the courthouse and say hello to a few of his constituents.
Let me shake your hand with my fist. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, that's where Daredevil works best.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong. Matt Murdock stories have always worked best when they feel personal.
Yeah, and I mean, and the Matt Fisk courtroom material really, really worked. And it was kind of funny because we saw this showdown that reminded people of this core dynamic between these characters, and it wasn't punching; it was really a courtroom drama, but also a drama of ideology.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in this specific situation for this moment in, again, season 2 of Daredevil Born Again, Fisk genuinely believes he is the system.
Oh, very much. Just went through it maybe with less than official ways. I mean, and watching this, watching all of the Daredevil series, the first 3 seasons on Netflix, the Defenders, which was okay. I have hope for that, though, because I think that's what the next season is going to be. But also, really, just Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio are so good together. And I don't know, Jim, if you've seen interviews of them. They are almost infectious. There's clearly a kinship, and these two really just enjoy each other's company. Yet, and when they're together in interviews, they're so unlike their characters. Yet when they are together, at this point, they've become the definitive version of these characters.
Now, speaking, though, of definitive version of Marvel characters, let's now talk about the Punisher, because where was he when all of this was going down, at City Hall, and Fisk was getting handsy with his constituents?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I can't imagine that question hasn't come up within Marvel Studios. And I'm hoping we find out in this special because seems like he would have been there. Even Bullseye had his arc. And he got his time to sort of evolve. So, I love that Marvel's letting these corners connect again. Obviously, Punisher feels very relevant. There's those Spider-Man rumors. We know that, the next thing to see is Punisher, One Last Kill, and we've got Spider-Man. So I'm hoping that ties those things together, because the street level heroes, they do feel like they actually all together collectively inhabit the same New York. And that is something that, it's been missing for a while.
You're not wrong. It does feel cohesive again. But honestly, what's funny is we're all acting like this idea of Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk colliding in a courtroom is some like new, bold, prestige TV reinvention. But Marvel basically did this exact same setup back in 1989.
Oh, yes, they did. Matt Murdock, Wilson Fisk, courtroom drama, street level corruption, Marvel crossover storytelling. But, we're going to save that, because it opens up a much bigger conversation about what fandom even looked like back then, which is very different from today.
Oh, wildly different. Okay, so let's put a pin in that, because we are absolutely coming back to that later on in today's show.
Here's what we're going to do, Jim. One thing we touched on last episode that continued developing this week was the fallout from those Marvel layoffs. But now,
oh boy,
yeah, we're getting more artists speaking publicly, and honestly, some of these details are actually kind of fascinating.
Yeah, this is the Polygon piece. You saw that, right?
Yes, and what struck me most wasn't even so much the corporate side of it. It was hearing from former visual development artists describe how the MCU actually got its visual identity. Now, we've talked about this before. how the teams weren't just drawing costumes, but helping shape story language and tone and the visual continuity and character translation. And several artists specifically talked about how deep their comic knowledge was.
Yeah, and Marvel really did build a recognizable house style over time.
Yeah, that's right. Now, the concern some of these artists are expressing is, what happens when that institutional memory disappears? Because one thing the article touched on is that the freelance culture can create fragmentation and losing the consistency or the shared language, long-term collaboration, or even just momentum.
Yeah, and of course, hanging over all of this right now is the AI conversation. I mean, nobody outright has confirmed that Marvel is replacing artists with AI, but several former employees have openly said, would we be surprised? No. And then Evangeline Lilly also weighed in this week with some pretty strong comments about the broader industry shift, didn't she?
Oh, she did. First, in an Instagram reel, she had alleged the people who invented these characters in the first place, who designed them in the first place, are now being replaced by AI. Strong words. Now, Disney has not attributed the layoffs to AI. And in the video's description, Lilly states, almost as a disclaimer, I cannot confirm or deny that the motive for these layoffs was AI replacement, which, this really just adds to this feeling that Hollywood is entering it's just a transitional phase right now. I had actually heard a quote just this past week that was talk in regards to something else that said that AI is not going to replace jobs. The lack of knowledge of AI is going to replace jobs. So there's a deeper conversation happening that needs to happen. And I'll always equate it to construction or, to like the factory, when auto manufacturers that, they used to pick up the door and they'd put the door on the car. And then the robots came in, the Kukla arms. They brought the robots in to automate the picking the door up and putting it on the car. Now, if you just put the door on the car, yes, that was a problem because the robots came in and replaced that. But if you knew how to program the robot that put the door on the car, or even better, fix the robot that put the door on the car, then there's still, it's like the role and the position shifts as machinery and learning and like all of that. And I think that's just where we are now. It's this strange time where the position has to shift and evolve as technology shifts and evolves.
Well, no. What's fascinating about you bringing up that aspect of this exact story is earlier this week, Len and I had on the Disney Dish, we had Roland Betancourt, who has written Disneyland and the Rise of Automation. And its subtitle is How Technology Created the Happiest Place on Earth. And what was fascinating is Roland told a story to myself and Len about how in the mid-1950s, there were literally 3 years of congressional hearings because automation at that time was just as scary to the American working man as AI is right now. Just to know, it's coming to take our jobs, and what are we going to do about this? And it just, and Mr. Betancourt, pointed out that, again, this weird historical parallel that, yes, at this exact moment, this is the thing, it's become this hot button topic, and everybody's talking about it, but they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. Right. So I could just, again, that was a wonderful comparison you made right there. And likewise, if you want to put it in historical context, pick yourself up a copy of Disneyland and the Rise of Automation.
It's exactly it.
Back now to Marvel actors kind of navigating this weirdness. Tatiana Maslany, She-Hulk, drifted back into the conversation recently, which was interesting because, well, She-Hulk had become something of a lightning rod online, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's kind of something that everybody just automatically assumed was a massive failure. But she was asked recently how She-Hulk could return. And she said that, quote, "I think it would take somebody like Jessica Gao to weave her into the world because she knows that character so deeply and loves her and gets her tone. But there is something about She-Hulk being the star of her own show that makes sense." So that seems like the door isn't completely shut. And, suddenly there's this reevaluation happening where Marvel's openly saying the show actually performed very well with general audiences.
Which honestly does track with something you and I have talked about before, how online fandom is not always representative of the entire audience anymore.
Oh, right. I mean, a thing can feel hated online while millions of normal people are just casually watching it after dinner.
Yeah, and Tatiana Maslany herself has been pretty candid about Disney and industry concerns over the past few years.
Oh, yeah. And it honestly makes this whole moment kind of fascinating because actors and artists and fans and executives, everybody seems to be processing modern fandom just differently right now.
Yeah, which is a very big contrast to 30 and 40 years ago when it was a veritable desert out there. But before we go back in time, there's this.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You know those friends who support your preference for podcasts over music on road trips? That's the energy State Farm brings to insurance. With over 19,000 local agents, they help you find the coverage that fits your needs, so you can spend less time worrying about insurance and more time enjoying the ride. Download the State Farm app or go online at statefarm.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
And we're back again. You are listening to Marvelous Disney with Dan Graney, and we teased this earlier. So tell the nice folks where we're going.
Okay, Jim, I want to go back 37 years to this very week, specifically May 7th, 1989. And that's when The Trial of the Incredible Hulk airs on NBC. And this is important because younger fans genuinely may not understand what a huge deal this thing was at the time.
Oh, yeah. No, this TV movie was event television for Marvel fans back then, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was after the show had run its course and they were just doing these one-off specials. But even now, it is somewhat buried under everything that came after. But let's just look at the lineup. Okay, you've got Bill Bixby, Dr. David Bruce Banner. You've got Lou Ferrigno reprising his role as the Hulk. You've got hunky, Tiger Beat star Rex Smith as Daredevil, and John Rhys Davies as Wilson Fisk. That seems wrong, but that's Wilson Fisk. And most importantly, so we're talking about Marvel characters that were crossing over. I mean, at the time that mattered. It should have.
email. And what's fascinating rewatching the trial of the Incredible Hulk now is realizing how much modern Daredevil DNA is already present. I mean, we got Matt Murdock versus Wilson Fisk. We got courtroom drama. We got corruption. We got street-level stakes, coupled with moral ambiguity. I mean, what's fascinating to me is these aren't brand new MCU inventions. I mean, Marvel already was trying to tell these sorts of stories in 1989.
Oh, yeah, just with a lot less money. But that's the thing. Fans now sometimes talk like interconnected Marvel storytelling began with Iron Man. But really, fans and creators have been trying to connect these worlds together for decades. And this is where I think modern fandom has lost a little perspective because, back then there was no internet culture, no leak culture, no Hall H live streams, no Disney Plus, no YouTube breakdown channels. What you had were comic shops, TV Guide, Starlog magazine, sometimes Fangoria, convention rumors, and VHS recordings if you were fancy enough to have one of those. And that was it. And people were thrilled.
Well, but back then, one crossover could fuel your imagination for months.
Or years. And honestly, I think fandom filled in a lot of gaps themselves. You just sort of had to imagine shared universes, or imagine sequels or crossovers. And now every single thing is hyper documented instantly. It goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. And somehow we've all become harder to impress.
And look, to be fair here, we should point out this isn't old fandom good, new fandom bad.
No, not at all. Because objectively, it is just an amazing time to be a Marvel fan, a DC fan, a fan. Charlie Cox exists. Vincent D'Onofrio exists. X-Men 97, Spider-Man. All of this stuff, the MCU, it exists. And if if you told 1989 Marvel fans that someday they'd get this serialized Daredevil storytelling with giant budgets and interconnected continuity across movies and streaming, they would have thought you got hit with gamma radiation.
Or at the very least, exposed to toxic waste. But I do think that there is something charming about the era where fandom survived more on imagination and anticipation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've probably lost a little patience along the way.
Yeah, but still, no trailer.
Yeah, still, no trailer. But hey, we survived the trial of the Incredible Hulk. We'll survive this.
By the way, that should honestly be on a T-shirt. Couple of things before we go here, because you reminded me of late 70s, early 80s cameos. And there were two. Now, mind you, this is the DC side of the fence rather than the Marvel side of the fence. But I've got a copy of the early screenplay for the I'm going to age myself here because Richard Lester did a lot of the reshoots on Superman, but he's not credited with the original Superman. In fact, it's the gentleman who did Goonies,
Richard Donner.
Richard Donner. Okay, because what's interesting about there's that scene in the movie where Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, and he's broadcasting at a frequency that only Superman can hear. And so Christopher Reeve is flying around the city. At that point in the script, Superman spies a bald man from above and flies down, and it spins him around. But again, to give you some idea of, what they were looking at to do cameos back in the day, it was Telly Savalas. All right, who literally has a lollipop. No, that's literally his line in the movie. All right, that's yes. He was going. Kojak was going to show up for a 1/10 of a second. And just but again, just it was, and I want to say that Richard Donner, and I guess they reached out to Savalas. He was up for the idea, but it's like, no, we're in the dramatic portion of the movie. All right, no, this isn't when we do the silly cameo.
It's okay that they didn't do that. That movie is still considered one of the greatest superhero comic book movies of all time. Even with their and the second one too has some weirdness to it, but again, and Kevin Feige is one of the biggest fans and is constantly trying to achieve that level of storytelling. So.
Oh. Yeah, good. But the other story from this era is we now jump ahead to Tim Burton's the first Batman movie, and you were just talking about how they literally made the decision with the first Spider-Man movie of the home trilogy. It's like, we don't need to show Uncle Ben dying. We've done this dozens and dozens of times at this point. But this is Batman, and they felt, well, we got to do the Crime Alley thing. We got to show, Bruce Wayne's parents being killed. And John Peters literally goes to Tim Burton and says, I got an idea. If we really want to make this scene cool, when we kill Batman's father, it should be the actor who played Batman on the Adam West. It should be the guy from television. And think about it. Think about how that might have resonated. Yeah. But it was the same thing. Burton supposedly argued, no, this has got to be traumatic. I can't have the audience excited to see Adam West in my movie. Yeah. I have to have little Bruce Wayne traumatized by his parents being killed. And that to me is always the fascinating thing about this. The notion of a cameo or putting something like that in a film, and you have to argue about, am I undermining the film or am I creating a cool moment for people out in the audience? Right. That push and pull. So,
well, what's funny is because they were trying, there was this sort of, you talk about the push and pull, the Batman movie, the 1980 Batman movie, there was a concerted effort to not be 66 Batman.
Yes.
And so then it's like you are undermining that concerted effort. Now, when the Brady Bunch movie came out and most of the surviving cast of the Brady Bunch cameoed in the movie, it was great. Go ahead, do it. Have fun with it. Because, one, it felt like endorsement, because it was sort of a teasing movie, but also, it teased, but it also walked the line of being, endearing and somewhat, it still held it, in an endearing place. So that, those kind of cameos, those are totally fine because they mesh together. But to take, something so tonally apart from what they were trying to do, Plus, I'll be honest, I don't think Adam West would have done it.
Well, I don't know about that. I get from conversations with folks who work on Family Guy that Adam West was game for anything.
That is true.
Just sort of like,
that is true.
Just like, you want me to say this line? Absolutely, I'll say this line. So.
Well, yeah, he would have liked that. He would have liked the paycheck.
He would have liked we loved the paycheck. So, all right. Well, on that mercenary note, I want to thank you folks for listening to Marvel Us Disney, and Dan and I will be back in a couple of weeks to probably dissecting 27 frames off of a teaser poster.
As tradition demands.
But until then, Dan, where can our friends find you?
Well, you can find me on YouTube at The Hububbery. That's HUBBERY. We are in the process of getting ready. I think by the time this goes out, or very soon, we'll have our breakdown of Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins.
Okay. Well, worth it alone for Joel Grey walking on water.
Well, the Joel Grey thing, that's, yeah. That's a choice. However,
it is. It's also a lot of latex. You know,
a lot of
just say
latex,
it,
and
you know?
he was very respectful, as much as possible, for something that now seems insane to even consider.
All true. All true.
What about you, Jim? Where are you at?
Let's see. Me. Okay. You can find me. We got Disney Dish, the podcast I do with Lon Testa. We have Fine Tuning, the podcast I do with Drew Taylor. Likewise, we have the Epic Universal podcast. I do that with Eric Hersey, the very talented gentleman who edits and produces a lot of the shows here at Jim Hill Media. Likewise, I Want That Too. That's our Disney merch podcast that I do with Eric's lovely bride, Lauren. And then there's The Case For. That's the new show that Len and I have been doing with Chris Cox. So, and I just thanked Eric Hersey, but I also want to thank David Gray, who also does an amazing job when it comes to editing, pulling together these podcasts. Quick favor to ask is, Mr. Graney and I head for the exits here, folks. If you could head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this show, that would be helpful for folks to discover Marvelous Disney. Social media-wise, you can find me on X and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and then over at Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. So, again, on behalf of Dan Graney, who's still recovering from an iffy brunch, want to thank you for listening to Marvelous Disney, and we will see you next time.